Okay, so we got through this part. I know we talked about that with the bicameral Congress, two houses, 2 year terms, 1 year, and then there's two sessions. So 2 year terms, each of those years is considered a session. We are currently in the 117th Congress, first session. You want to make sure you write that down. I guarantee, I know for a fact, there's a question that's going to ask, what's the next session? And then another question is going to ask, what's the previous session? So you're going to want to be able to answer those. So, what is the previous session in Congress from last year? Yeah,
116th in the second
you
session.
got it. And then what would next year's be?
117th in the second
You
session.
got it. Perfect. Good. All right. We talked about adjournment, prorogue, the possibility that the president can actually send them on a break. You don't typically hear about it, but it's possible. And I showed you guys their lovely schedule for this year. Now, mind you, they are planning on working more than what's on there now because of the Build Back Better plan. There's also defense spending. The budget has to be taken care of. So they may be working a little bit longer than that. But special sessions, we talked about that with the Czech and Terry Schiavo. Um, and then we dealt with the specific qualifications 25 years old, naturalized citizen for 7 years, and you have to live in the state you're elected. And then, of course, different informal qualifications that we tend to look at just as humans when we're looking at people to vote. Um, the governor can pick anyone who's the vacancies. And then we got through the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. We talked about the fact that she can pigeonhole things. She really can control a lot of the legislation that comes in and out of Congress. And then those are just some of the people that help run Congress right now. Um, our state specifically, we're looking at the apportionment, 435 members. We are currently at 16, but I think in 2023 we will be down to 15. And I was able to pull that map up and show you guys that. Our continuous, and they redraw those borders every 10 years. So that's going to be definitely looking a lot different next in 2023. Our two reps, Bob Gibbs, Anthony Gonzalez. Um, 7th and 16th districts, and I had mentioned Anthony Gonzalez is planning on retiring this year. He's not going to continue. Bob Gibbs, I have not heard anything else about him, so he is potentially sticking around. Now, the next thing I want to show you guys, I found this on HBO. It's actually relatively funny. I edited the pieces that were inappropriate for school, a couple of swear words, and then the end of it I had to get rid of. But he talks about gerrymandering. The basic idea of gerrymandering is I will draw the districts or redraw to make sure that no matter what happens, one party always wins out, right? So let's say that you two are Democrats and we're all Republicans. What I would do is I would draw the border so that Ethan and I are both around one of you, so that it's a 2-1. So we're always going to beat you, and then you three would be drawn around with you, Izzy, and then no matter what you do, those three would always beat you. That's illegal. You can't do that technically. There are ways around that, but that's not supposed to be able to happen. So I want to go back real quick. So we have gerrymandering, Senate's Sherrod Brown, Robert Portman, two per state. Used to be elected by the state legislature. Now we vote for them. 6 year terms, continuous body, third, a third, a third. Two, then six, four, then six, then six, then six. And that's where that continuous body. Good. Here's your formal qualifications. Slightly different from the House. 30 years old for the Senate. Rather than 7 years, you have to have 9 years as a naturalized citizen. And then living in the States, of course. Now, the one thing that happens with senators, most of their time they end up spending most of their time in Washington D.C. because again they have the 6 years. So a lot of them have a residence in the state. Like there was one senator who had a mobile home with an address in that states, just to say that he was still a resident of the state, but not really living there. For the most part, he was in Washington, D.C. And then the informal qualifications are the exact same. Right? So party identification, name familiarity, the person's gender, their ethnic characteristics, then political experience, and sexuality is kind of like the newest thing we look at. Okay, let's go. Sorry, I'll come back. All right, let's get through this right here. Some of the stuff I should have it all bold-faced underlined for you guys, so you know what you're filling in. Leadership of the Senate. The president is the vice president of the U.S. So the only job assigned to the vice president is to run the Senate. The only job the vice president actually has, though, in the Senate is to break a tie. So right now in the Senate, there's 50 Republicans and there's 50 Democrats. Actually, there's 49 Democrats and one independent who typically votes Democrat. So every time they vote, it's a 50-50 tie. So Kamala Harris has made them a Democratic Senate because she breaks the tie for the Democrats every single time there's a vote. Now, Kamala Harris, at this point in time, may have lots of time and she probably could run the Senate every single day. But most of the time, she has other things she needs to do, or the other vice presidents, other things to do. So while they're not there, they have a temporary leader. And the temporary leader is called the president pro tempore. Most everyone calls him the pro temp or the president pro temp. And right now, I'll show you guys that guy's name here in a second. I believe he is also not going to run again. He's also said that he's resigning after this, or retiring, I should say, after this election coming up. Okay, you guys got those? So those two people are Kamala Harris and Patrick Leahy. So of course you guys know Kamala Harris. Patrick Leahy, his one major claim to fame, he was in the Batman movie with Heath Ledger as a government. I think he was the governor or the mayor of the city, or he was one of the politicians from the city of Gotham. So next time you watch the Batman with Heath Ledger in it, who's playing Joker, he pulls his knife on an old guy at a party, and that is Patrick Leahy. Chuck Schumer is the majority leader. You tend to see him a lot. Mitch McConnell is the very, 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 very unexciting speaker for the Republicans. He's very deep, but he just talks like this a lot. And it's not very exciting. He's very monotone. Richard Durbin, majority whip, and John Thune is our minority whip. And the minority is the Republican Party right now. Majority is the Democratic Party right now. In regards to impeachment, the Senate is the sole power of actually trying the case. So the House brings the charges and they literally walk it over to the Senate building. The Senate gets the charges and they hold a trial. The senators, all 100 of them, must be present, and they essentially listen to the defense and they listen to the prosecution, listen to the defense. The leader of the impeachment trial is the Chief Justice, so John Roberts would be in charge of this one. Now, here's a fun little fact: the last impeachment, John Roberts did not run the last impeachment trial. He said there's no need to have this trial, and so he didn't do it. So Patrick Leahy, the guy on the right, ran the whole thing. There was a push by some people to say, technically, that is unconstitutional. Because if you look right here, in the Constitution it says that Chief Justice shall preside, and he didn't. So there was a push at one point. They said, well, if they do find him guilty, we can appeal it because it wasn't the Chief Justice in charge. It was a Democrat, Patrick Leahy, that was running the whole thing, and he potentially may have been biased. So, and the other thing to keep in mind, and this is one of the big reasons why Trump was not kicked out of office, because you have to have 2/3 votes. So you would have to have 66 votes to get him kicked out. In the first impeachment trial, they had 51 votes. One Republican voted with the Democrats, and the next one was 50 votes. And so, I'm sorry, 52 votes and 51 votes because the Democrats had more seats before the election. Um, and then this past election, or the second impeachment trial, there was a chunk of Republicans that voted to impeach President Trump on the charges, but they weren't anywhere near 66 votes. So so that was one of the reasons why he was not kicked out of office, because he needs 2/3 vote. He did not have that. All right, we will stop there, folks.